We have about 20 attendees. We're going to stall a little bit as people come logging in, but thank you all for coming. The Civic League is hosting this forum tonight, which is about light pollution in the dark sky movement. We have Kelly Beatty here from the International Dark Skies. I will introduce him further. We have Lauren Sinatra, our energy coordinator for the town of Nantucket. We also have Leslie Snell here from the Plus Department, and she will be here talking about the bylaw and enforcement. I want to thank Gail Walker. She is here and has been spearheading just community focus on how we light this island in many ways. I'll leave it at that, Gail. But we wouldn't be here if it wasn't really for Gail. So thank you, Gail. Thank you, NCTV 18, and again, the Civic League for hosting this. The Civic League does so much for this community, whether it's meet the candidates, meet the articles, and probably 30 other conversations that they facilitate in our community, and we're better for it. So we're about 28 attendees. I'll wait another minute. Introduce myself in case you don't know me. My name is Jason Bridges. I'm the interim executive director of the Mariah Mitchell Association. I also wear another hat. I'm an elected official on the select board. So I have a couple different hats and how I feel that this is important to our island and our community. And I'll talk a little bit about that in a couple minutes. So tonight is very similar if you've been to a select board meeting or some of the other committee meetings for the town. And if you're an attendee, you will be able to raise your hand and we will be able to call on you. However, we're not going to do that until most of our participants, Kelly, Lauren, Leslie, and myself, until we kind of go over the information. So we're going to have a Q&A section right around 6:10. So keep, just jot down your questions. That's what I have to do. If I think of something, I got to jot it down because I'll lose it as I'm listening to other people talk about subject matter like this. So write it down, keep your questions, and then you'll be able to kind of raise your hand as an attendee, and then I'll call on you, and Frank from NCTV 18 will allow you to speak, and then we'll go from there. We also have Gary Walker, who is our telescope engineer from Mariah Mitchell Association. He's here. He has been in this world for a long time and can answer anything technically that we could probably come up with. And Dr. Regina Jorgensen is going to join us for the Q&A. She's our astronomy director at Mariah Mitchell Association. And she also has a pretty good take on why dark skies are important. So, well, I want to get started. We are, and I'll remind us on how to talk if somebody is interested. I'll just kind of remind us that around 6:10 that we'll open it up for Q&A. So we're going to start off with Kelly Beatty. He has been explaining science and wonder of astronomy to the public since 1974. Thank you. He's an award-winning writer, communicator, specializes in planetary science and space exploration as a senior editor for Sky and Telescope magazine. He holds a bachelor's degree from the California Institute of Technology. I think we call that Caltech, right? And a master's degree in science journalism from BU. Kelly's has been active in efforts to reduce light pollution for more than 30 years. He served for more than a decade on the board of directors for the International Dark Sky Association and is now the officer of IDA's Massachusetts chapter. So I want to introduce Kelly. Thank you for being here.
Hi, thank you very much, Jason, and thank you all for coming on this lovely spring day. I'm going to jump right into it. We're going to talk today about a set of framework of why worrying about dark skies is important, and also what you can do to improve it. So we're going to start this slideshow right there. Okay, so here's an interesting quote that was written almost a century ago by Henry Besson about how with lights and ever more lights, we drive the holiness and beauty of the night back to the forest and the sea. Again, he wrote this a century ago at the dawn of incandescent lighting and lighting of the night in earnest. And So when we talk about light pollution, we're really talking about artificial light that can take many forms. It can be uh, somebody else's security light that shines in your bedroom window at night, or glare from poorly shielded lights, or anything that really disturbs the natural landscape. And a lot of this light ends up going into the sky instead of on the ground where it should be going. Now, I'm going to give you a couple of examples. Just to, you've probably seen ones like this and more. This is actually in my hometown of Chelmsford. On the left there, you see a classic kind of antique looking light fixture, but that's what it looks like at night. And you can tell, I took it on a kind of a foggy night, you can tell that there's a lot of waste going on there. And we kind of divide this light universe, if you will, up into three different categories. One is light that goes above horizontal. That's pretty obvious. That's uplight that goes into the sky, never hits the ground. A lot of light does hit the ground in a useful way, but there's a little wedge of light that creates glare. You can imagine if you're walking along the sidewalk, this is something that would be annoying to you. So just a couple of examples of good and bad street lights. Here's the street. Can you see the cursor, by the way, as I moved around? Yes, no? Anyway, yes, okay, great. This this is an old style street light, and the light bulb is here in the bottom of this sort of glass bowl, and the glass bowl is used to distribute the light. It creates a fair amount of wasted light. A modern street light, one that sends all of its light to the ground, is shown on the bottom. That's a good design. Here's a common kind of security light slapped onto the wall of a building. We call this a wall pack, and it's designed to try to light a parking lot from a great distance away. And this is an example seen in a side view of how much light from that is wasted and going up into the sky. There's another kind of common light. I'm not sure what you've got, whether you have these on Nantucket, but you know, the utility, National Grid, would happily install a light for you as a small business owner on a utility pole. And then when those are lit up at night, they are also horrible, wasty lights. So let me tell you 5 things that I think you should take home with us as to why light pollution is bad in many different ways. First, and perhaps most obviously, that it causes a loss of the starry sky. Many of you are old enough, I'm sure, to remember this widespread blackout in the Northeast quite a few years ago now, 2003. And you can see a big area here that was blacked out, fortunately not Boston. There was a guy in Toronto who took a picture on the left during the blackout. He lived in Toronto, and all those light you see there in the sky is the Milky Way with all the lights blacked out. And then on the right, this is the one night later when all the lights of Toronto came back on. So this is a very graphic demonstration of what we've lost to light pollution in most of our lives. And fortunately for you, it's not quite that bad on Nantucket. The National Park Service has for many years been conducting an assessment of parks around the country, showing how light pollution affects the park environment at night. This is Natural Bridges out in Utah, a very dark place. The big circle in the middle is an all sky photo, so straight up is in the middle. And then this is kind of stretched out around the horizon. And most of the glow that you see there is from stars as opposed to actually from city lights. Now contrast that with this. This is Las Vegas as seen from Mojave National Park Reserve. And it's quite horrible. In fact, that glow in the distance is Las Vegas, and that this pillar of light that you see here is actually from the Luxor Hotel. Horrible. A little closer to home, Acadia National Park has pretty good skies. If any of you have been up there, you know that it's a beautiful dark spot. The International Dark Sky Association has this sort of categorization, almost like a good housekeeping seal, if you think about it that way, of places around the country that are considered really good dark sites. You notice there aren't too many of them here in the Northeast. It's something we hope to change. A second reason to be concerned about light pollution is just the annoying factor that it has, and And it might not be obvious from this picture. This is sort of your typical, all-night security light that you might have on your home or your business. If the glare from that is shining into your eyes as you're trying to assess the situation, you might miss the fact that there's a guy standing there on the other side, just on the other side of the fence. So glare is really a problem, especially a problem for older people whose eyes, as our eyes start to deteriorate, glare becomes more and more of a nuisance and hazard for us. A third is environmental consequences. And living on Nantucket, that lots of things go bump in the night. There are many, many creatures that migrate or mate or eat during the night, and they require dark in order to make this happen well. There's a lot of research that's been going on with fireflies, for example, and how they are unable to mate because of light pollution competing with them. Just quickly, here's an example of bird migration. You can see that up the East Coast here is something called the Atlantic Flyway. It's a major migratory route for birds. And so during migrations, birds use a number of visual cues, including the reflection of stars and the moon off of water to navigate their way. But if a big bright building gets in the way, as it might say here on the right, they end up just circling around that building and falling from the sky out of exhaustion after doing that all night. And in fact, tens of millions of birds per year are killed during migrations because they run into lighted buildings on their way to and from their migration sites. Now, these environmental consequences aren't limited to critters; they affect us as well. You probably have heard of the compound called melatonin. Melatonin is a compound that is made by the pineal gland in our brain, and it is created during darkness. There's a sensor in our eyes that triggers the pineal gland's secretion of melatonin. Literally, our eyes tell our brain it's dark, make melatonin. So we make very little melatonin during the day. We make a lot of it at night, except if you interrupt that nighttime cycle by, say, going to the refrigerator or going to the bathroom and turning on your light in your bathroom, your melatonin production crashes and you have to start over again. And this needn't be necessarily something indoors. It could be something outdoors that is shining in your window, for example. So this has become such a concern among biologists that they have actually labeled shift work, like think night shift nurses or a graveyard shift in a factory. If you're doing that kind of work and are constantly having your circadian rhythm disrupted, then it can lead to increased risk of cancer, breast cancer, especially in women, and prostate cancer in men. Now, I don't want to, scare you all and thinking that every light shining into your bedroom window at night is going to give you breast cancer. It's not, but in enough doses, it certainly can be a hazard. And the American Medical Association has gotten into this act too. They're showing they want you all to know that too much light at night can have potentially harmful effects. Last is energy waste. Here is a shot. You've all seen photos like this of the Earth at night as seen from space. Here is the greater Northeast area. Here's Long Island in New York. Boston's up here in the upper left-hand corner. I think Nantucket is showing there barely. And this is a shot from the International Space Station of downtown Boston. And I want you to notice these threads of light, this like a spider web almost. And you would think that these would be interstates, but in fact, they're state highways, Route 1, Route 9, which is where all the businesses are lined up along it. It's a very interesting problem. But let's get a little bit closer to home. This is a photograph taken from space, actually a combination of different photographs of Nantucket. And it's color coded, so the brighter yellows and greens show places where the intensity of light going up into the sky is strongest, and where you don't see any glow, that's where it's a pretty dark place. Some things are actually sticking out pretty well here, like the airport is clearly a hot spot. There's actually a hot spot for your schools south of Nantucket proper. and I was talking to Lauren about this the other day. We don't quite know what this glow is. There's really nothing there but a field. In any case, satellites have been taking pictures of Nantucket at night for more than a decade, and we can combine those images and get a sense of how good or bad the light pollution has been on Nantucket. And you see this, you don't need to worry too much about the numbers on the left. This runs from 2012 to about halfway through 2020. And you can see by the dashed red line that the amount of light that is going up into space is gradually increasing. And just, you might be wondering what these sharp peaks are, like at the beginning of 2014, 2015, and 2016. That's when there's snow cover on the ground. It actually reflects a lot more light up into the sky. So I would have to say, someone who pays close attention to this, it's too bad that your light pollution is growing, and let's hope we can do something about that. You're certainly not as bad as a lot of other places. And generally, your light pollution problem isn't, horribly bad. Now, what's going to happen from here on is that we're going to talk about the sort of the science of light, if you will. And the first thing I want to kind of get across to you is this notion that different kinds of lights, and especially light emitting diodes, LEDs, which are taking over our nighttime environment very quickly, have a characteristic called color temperature. It's essentially how warm or cool the light appears. And the cooler the light, the higher amount of blue light that's coming out of that light fixture. Blue light in a nighttime environment is bad, B-A-D, bad. It is the most disruptive light in terms of the environment, in terms of your circadian disruption, in terms of increasing glare, in terms of increasing light pollution and robbing you of the stars. So we at the International Dark Sky Association are pushing very hard, as is the American Medical Association, for color temperatures that are the lowest reasonable. And we measure that color temperature with a number, which is actually a temperature in the Kelvin scale. So as this graph kind of shows dramatically, the lower the number, the warmer the light. And you'll actually see this color temperature on lights that you might buy at a hardware store. It will tell you how many watts that are used, how many lumens it puts out, but it'll also tell you what the color temperature of that light bulb is. This is becoming something pretty common in the lighting business. And so any light that you might buy will have a color temperature associated with it. And the higher that color temperature, the more blue light it puts out, and the worse it is for us at night in the environment. And so I mentioned LEDs as something that's a growing way of lighting the night. This graph kind of compares the efficiency of LEDs, how much light you get for every watt of electricity. And it far surpasses all of the traditional kinds of lighting that you might be used to. Incandescent lighting, or halogens, or fluorescence, or mercury vapor. They are all losing the battle to LEDs, which is why LEDs are becoming so popular, and which is why Nantucket is considering, among other things, converting all of its street lights to LEDs, because they are very energy efficient. They certainly are. But there's a cautionary tale here. These two graphs show you the sensitivity of your eye to light. And that sensitivity changes. The Cohen's curve, which is this one here on the bottom, is how we see, our eyes perceive light during the daytime. This is our daytime color vision. And you can see that the peak is here in the sort of yellow-green area. At night, our eyes shift in the way they perceive light to a different kind of set of cells within our retina called the rods. And the rods are kind of monochromatic. They don't see color, but they are very, very sensitive to blue light, which is why when you see a car coming at you on a roadway at night that has these, newer style, high intensity LED lighting headlights, they seem so harsh because our rods are like overreacting to that blue light. And so why we need to pay attention to this color temperature is that in Nantucket and virtually everywhere, the predominant source of lighting for decades has been something called high pressure sodium, or HPS, which has a very warm look to it, kind of peachy colored. And the equivalent color temperature for high pressure sodium is about 2200 Kelvin. Now, I want to compare that with a couple of examples of what an LED might look like. And you can see that huge, on the right, the 5,000 Kelvin, the huge blue spike, and to a lesser extent, the spike there on the left from 3,000 Kelvin. That the one on the left is what you want to strive for, because the less blue light you put into the environment at night, the better for all concerned. And it doesn't necessarily, just because there's less blue light doesn't mean that your perception of color or your safety is hindered in any way. It's just a different color. You can make the light as intense or not as you want, as long as you keep most of the blue light out of it. This is just another way of showing you the same thing. This is a 4,000. The heavy black line is a very common kind of LED. And I want you to notice that that blue peak completely corresponds to the peak in our circadian sensitivity. So if I was exposed to this kind of light at night, it is the most likely to like really mess up my day-night cycle. And this is what we're trying to avoid. I'm going to skip this. That's an LED installation in Cambridge. But the point is that the American Medical Association wants us all to be using 3,000 Kelvin or lower on all outdoor installations, and especially roadways. So there has been progress. We at the IDA have been working for decades with a group called the the Illuminating Engineering Society, or IES. And just about this time last year, we jointly came out with these 5 principles that you see here. That light should have a clear purpose. It should be directed only where needed, no brighter than necessary, only on when it should be on. And the last point here, use warmer color lights when possible, that is low color temperature. At the end of the day, what's really important here is pretty common sense, pretty much common sense, to light only when you need it, where you need it, and just the right amount necessary, and no more, because everything else is waste. Now, when I got into this game a couple of decades ago, the notion of trying to raise awareness of light pollution was strange to a lot of people. But over time, many of us have encountered this notion of light pollution and how it can rob us of stars and interrupt our circadian cycles and so forth. Many major publications have done articles about light pollution. This National Geographic cover from about a decade ago, that's downtown Chicago, which is sort of the poster child for really bad lighting. What I'd like to do is for those who want to explore this a little bit more after we're done here today, is go to the International Dark Sky Association's website, darksky.org. And in particular, if you want, look up a short film called Losing the Dark. You can also find it on YouTube, which essentially covers the same material that I have today, obviously without the focus on Nantucket. But this is a problem that is, rampant all across the world, all across the US, here in Massachusetts, and as you've seen in Nantucket as well. And it's taken us decades for light pollution to kind of get to the state where it is, and it's going to take a long time to cure it, but we can cure it. And if you think about it, there are a lot of different kinds of pollution in this world, environmental pollution, toxic chemicals, and so forth. If you think about it, light pollution is the only kind of pollution that you can that you can get rid of it and save money in the process, because you'll be using less electricity. So I just want to leave, for those of you who are watching, and again, I want to thank you for coming today, a couple of take-home websites. There's my cell number, my email address. I am happy to engage any of you and talk to you. I feel very strongly about this. It is our dark skies, once we lose them, they're very difficult to get back. And it's no coincidence that the places in the US and in the world, in fact, where people are most concerned about light pollution are places exactly like Nantucket, where you have already pretty good dark skies and you want to hold on to them. I don't find too many people in Times Square worried about light pollution, but you on your island are certainly justified in being concerned about this and trying to do something about it. And so with that, Jason, I think I'll send it back to you.
Thank you, Kelly. I'm sure our 40 attendees have 10 questions each because that was a really, really good presentation. And I'm sure we're all trying to figure out what was in the west side over by, Cliff Road. What was that light over there? It's not the brewery. Okay. Thank you, Kelly. That was really good. I have talked to Kelly a couple times, so I've had this to process a little bit. So if this is the first time you're seeing all this, go back and watch it or go on his website. And there's really good films, and it's very multi-layered. But you got that was what I was going to open with, was the light pollution. It's the one pollution that we can do something about in a very short amount of time. And I like what you said there at the end. It can save us money too, which Lauren Sinatra will get in later. So thank you again, Kelly. That was really great. So everybody, keep your questions, write them down. We'll get to Q&A, and Kelly and everybody will be able to answer your questions. So this is my turn to talk about the Mariah Mitchell Association and why this is important to us. I think it's obvious that our namesake, Mariah Mitchell, was an astronomer, and a very good one, and a trailblazer. So it's part of our heritage. And we also do research right now, today. And not only is it important to our astronomy research, but we at staff meeting today, we were talking about this subject in this panel. And our aquarium director said, this is important to fish, everything, plankton. When it gets dark out, right, the plankton know to come up and eat. Well, if they see light, if there's buildings are too much blue light, then they're going to come up and they're going to be eaten, right? And we kind of need plankton. And then, everybody, for nocturnal animals, everybody had something to say about dark skies and blue light. So it's very important to our mission, right? It's one of the ways that we connect people to and get people passionate about science, is going to our observatory, having people look up and then look in the telescope. And it's not that we don't want to lose that because we want to lose emissions. Like, it's part of who we are, and it's really important to our organization. And so I think that is pretty obvious. So we're going to always be there trying to help educate and kind of advocate for dark skies. And I would say, from somebody that's been on the bicycle advisory committee and is really concerned about safety on the roads and sidewalks, I think somebody said, or maybe I listened to it on an IDA video today, it's like, dark skies does not mean dark grounds, right? We can still have safe sidewalks, and we can still have things that we'll talk about here soon with shields, and everybody can be safe and be lit, but it's the color, it's where it's going, and when do we need it. So I really like that last slide, Kelly. I want to give Gary Walker, our telescope engineer, Gary, did you want to say anything just for Mariah Mitchell, or how important it is to you? I mean, if there was no dark skies, you probably would be doing something else for a living. You're muted, Gary.
Yeah, that's true. And in fact, I have pretty much ceased observation myself. I personally have had a telescope since 1984. I now have to have my telescope in the Sierra Nevada mountains out near Fresno, California. And because of the dark skies that they offer, and because of the weather, and pretty much I'm at a telescope farm, and you'd think that was pretty unique, but there are about 150 other telescopes, guys just like myself, who have their telescope there, and most of them don't have a telescope in the backyard anymore. There's another telescope farm in New Mexico, and there's another 150 people, different people, who have a telescope there at 7,000 feet near Mayhel, New Mexico. And so it's become the thing that you almost have to have that kind of a situation in order to do the research and the imaging that the astronomers do these days. And they can just take pictures, which you've all seen in the news, but they're actually about half of them that are doing serious research, monitoring the brightness of stars, determining why these stars vary and what the mechanisms are, and collaborations with professional astronomers. So it's a very important issue.
Gary, in your time in Nantucket, have you seen it change a little bit? Is it harder to view in our two telescopes, the one in Loynes and the one here on Vestal Street?
Oh, yes. Yeah, you can definitely see it deteriorate over the years. I started 15 years ago doing this for Maria Mitchell Observatory in 2007. And during that time, it's continued to degrade.
All right. Thank you, Gary. I appreciate it. We're going to switch over to Leslie Snell. She's a Deputy Director of PLUS, the Planning and Land Use Services. And thank you, Leslie, for being here to talk about bylaws and enforcement and all that fun stuff with building.
All right, well, thank you all for having me. As Jason said, I'm Leslie Snell. I work at Planning and Land Use Services. I've been there for a long time. And I am not currently our town's lighting enforcement officer, but I have been periodically throughout the years. So I'm pretty familiar with this bylaw, and we'll get to who you need to contact if you have issues later in the presentation. So if we could switch to the slides, we'll just go on to the next one. So Chapter 102 of the Code of the Town of Nantucket is our outdoor lighting bylaw. It only applies to lights on the exterior of a structure or landscape lighting, nothing interior. It was adopted by a vote of town meeting in 2005. So, you know, it's been around for a while. It was effective on April 1st, 2005. And there was a provision in the bylaw that gave property owners on Nantucket 3 years to comply. So that bylaw is available online. Again, it's Chapter 102 of the Town Code. You can get it on the website, nantucket-ma.gov. Look for the policies and regulations tab, and then you'll go to the code. It's a little, there's a few steps there, but just Google it. You can find it, or I can help you find it at another time. So next slide, please. The purpose, a lot of this was covered in Kelly's presentation. I think, the purpose of these bylaws is consistent from place to place, eliminating glare and light trespass that can annoy your neighbors and cause safety problems, reducing energy and financial costs, preserving the rural character, enhancing the nighttime enjoyment of property, and enhancing the enjoyment of the night sky. Next slide. Before we get into what's prohibited, there is an exemption for residential exterior lighting, lights that have bulbs that are 40 watts or less. And that's a standard incandescent bulb. For some of the other bulbs, the halogens, LEDs, other things that people may use, a little conversion is needed to get to that 40 watt threshold. But so those are pretty low level lights. So what's prohibited: fixtures that allow the bulb to be directly visible, ground mounted floodlighting, and floodlighting that's not down directed and fully shielded, and uplighting that's not under a roof or some type of covering. And I have some images that I'll show you in a few minutes that will illustrate the right light and the wrong light to use. So next slide, please. Again, more uplighting for facades, trees and shrubs, any kind of blinking or flashing lights. Holiday displays are allowed just around the holidays, and then we strongly encourage you to take those down once the holiday's over. And safety and security lighting to some degree is prohibited, and in some cases is allowed. So if we could go to the next slide. Recreational purposes, that type of lighting is supposed to be turned off after 10 p.m. There is an exception to that if there's a match in play or something like that. This has been determined to apply to commercial recreational uses, not private properties that may have a tennis court or something like that. And then any architectural lighting that doesn't apply with HDC guidelines is prohibited. So for more details, you can review the bylaw in its entirety. And as I said earlier, that's online and available for review. Next slide, please. Okay, so here we have some examples. Floodlights, the one that says right light, you'll see it has a shield to cover the top and the edges of the light, so that way the light projects downward and it projects light where the light needs to project. Whereas the wrong light just allows the light to trespass and protrude out in places that don't need light. Next slide. Same thing with this one. The right light is fully shielded. It's downward aimed. You can't see the bulb unless you're standing underneath the light, whereas the wrong light projects the light outward and again lights other things that don't need to have light. Next slide. Path lighting. Again, the right light you'll see it's just lighting the path where people need to see to walk. The wrong light is lighting the grass and creating additional light that's not necessary. Next one. Uplighting. This image captures all kinds of things. You'll see the landscape lighting, the trees are very, very bright. There's a post light that's showing more landscaping and the lights, again, like not downward aimed, it's not shielded. The facade of the house is, lighted. There's a lot going on here and all of it is not allowed under our bylaw. Next slide. Pool lights. This is a new question that has just come up in recent years. And, now, homes are being built with more amenities. People have the outdoor recreation, or maybe not recreation, a lounge area that you see here. There's a fire pit. You've got the pool and, people are just doing more outdoor living. Typically, we have not taken a position that we regulate pool lights, assuming there's not some blatant violation of the bylaw. There are safety considerations that go along with making sure the pool is well lit. So we try to stay away from that if possible. Next slide. So the penalty for non-compliance with the bylaw is $100 per day for each violation. As I said, I've been the lighting enforcement officer on and off since this bylaw was adopted, and only once in my experience did I reach the point with someone that they were actually fined. In most cases, people who have some violation of the bylaw don't even know the bylaw exists, or they didn't realize that their fixture was a violation, and usually just a phone call and some education goes a long way. And I think most people, want to be compliant. They want to enjoy the night sky. It's a big plus of being on Nantucket. So I would recommend, for enforcement, next slide, that before you, proceed with reporting a violation, call your neighbor, call the homeowner, call the property owner, and, see if they can take some steps or if you can work together to resolve it. I mean, in most cases, it can be as simple as just changing the bulb or, replacing a fixture. It's not usually, a big project for the person. So Marcus Silverstein is our lighting enforcement officer right now. His contact information is on the slide. He's in our office full-time, available to assist you, but I do encourage you to, work with your neighbors. All right, and I'll turn that back to Jason.
Thank you, Leslie. I know there's gonna be a lot of questions about that, but I land where you are about the education as well. It's not just enforcement, it's education. And I have talked to people, and we even have some things that we can do here at Ryan Mitchell to change some fixtures that now that I've been talking to you guys about this, and that I know we can improve on some of our own facilities. Okay, thank you, Leslie. We're gonna go back to Kelly Beatty for dark sky issues about street lighting. Kelly, you're up. Oh, I'm sorry. I see a hand up, but we're gonna get to that after Kelly and Lauren Sinatra talk. Okay, but we'll keep your hand up and we'll get to you. Okay, there you go.
Okay, so what you have in Nantucket is a situation where a lot of the streetlights are not owned by the town or your villages. They're actually owned by National Grid. And it's a mixed bag. And so it's there was, for example, National Grid installed, and I'm not sure if Lauren, you're going to get to this, but National Grid installed a few LED streetlights as a pilot test along Milestone Road. And they are, that road is a long road that's not a complicated road. There aren't a lot of curves, and there are a few intersections. And fortunately, these streetlights have been installed mostly at the intersections. But I want you, as you're driving around, I want you to notice those lights because they are 4,000 Kelvin. And a lot of lighting, especially local lighting people, especially those in utilities, have embraced this sort of 4,000 Kelvin standard because they think that represents best practice. It does not. All across the country, there are places that have not only, and even here in Massachusetts, a lot of Massachusetts towns are going to 3,000, 2,700, even lower color temperatures, because you know what? People like the look of a warmer light fixture. And especially for Nantucket, where so much of your economy revolves around the tourism and the ambiance that you create there. It's really important to make this decision when it comes time to replace your street lights and even your lights around your homes and your businesses, to do it the right way. And the beautiful thing about LEDs, they can be very good. They are certainly very efficient. They can be controlled remarkably well. They can be dimmed, which those old high pressure sodium fixtures cannot. They can be turned on and off. They can be, there are towns, and Cambridge is one of them, where every street light is connected to a central computer wirelessly. And if you want to change the intensity of a particular street light, or if you want to turn them all down to half power after midnight, you can do that with just a few mouse clicks. And so as you collectively and individually approach the replacement of the lighting that you have to LEDs, these are all factors that you want to consider. And there are powerful economic forces to replace what you've got to LEDs. They will save you a bunch of money. Gail and Jason and others here have started the first steps in looking at what a replacement of your street lighting would involve. One step would be to take the streetlights that are owned by National Grid and to purchase them so that you on the island actually own them and can control the outcome that you have. And then the second thing is to create a system that is best for all around. As Jason pointed out, it's not about having no light. It's about having the right kind of light and the right level of light. And so there are the street lights that you have, for example, in downtown Nantucket are high pressure sodium. They create this nice warm glow, but that's a quickly disappearing technology. And those antique fixtures that you see there, look at them carefully the next time you go downtown. They don't just shine light on the street; they shine them up on the buildings and up into the sky. And so you're going to be moving into a direction where you're going to have to be making some decisions. And so I just want to give you 2 or 3 touch points that I hope will guide your decision making. One is color temperature, and we've said a lot about that. You want as little blue light as possible, and not having blue light doesn't mean that somehow you're missing part of the spectrum or won't see stuff. In fact, the high pressure sodium lighting that you have, I kind of went through it quickly, essentially is just putting out one wavelength of light, orange. And so if you're using high pressure sodium lighting and you're trying to find your car in a parking lot and you can't tell a red car from a green car, that's the high pressure sodium lighting at work. LEDs, even low warm hued color, low color temperature ones, have a much better ability to allow you to see different colors at night, which is great, and that's something to be that you should strive for. So you want to pay attention to the color temperature. You want to pay attention especially to the intensity of the light. And I've sort of cautioned Jason and Gail and Lauren and the others here that you're going to want to engage your public safety sector. It's not about making dark alleyways that no one can see into, but it is about controlling the glare on the lights, so that if you're lighting an alleyway, you don't want to have to compete. Your eyes don't want to have to compete with bright bulbs in your field of view. And so you'd be surprised, because our eyes are very well adapted to seeing in dim light at night. You'd be surprised how little light you can get away with and see very well at night, even in all kinds of circumstances, even in uneven ground. And then the final thing to think about is, do those lights need to be on all the time? Or do they need to be as bright all the time? There are certainly places where you are going to want to have a light. On Milestone Road, for example, it's a good thing to have street lights at intersections or conflict points, or someplace where you have roads and crosswalks where you're going to have pedestrians. And I know you have a lot of pedestrians there on the island. But you want to design those lights in such a way that, maybe the lights are at full strength from, say, dusk until midnight. And then maybe from midnight to dawn, you want to be able to dial them back so that they're not as bright and they don't use as much energy. If time permits, at the end, we're going to talk about some legislation that's going through the State House right now, and how that could help you and us achieve better light pollution control. So I urge all of you that have come today, and look, I appreciate that you've had enough interest to come and listen to us speak. I encourage you to pay attention to these issues, both island-wide and in your little corner of the island, wherever that might be, and how you can improve the lighting. It is a good thing to do, and these LED fixtures. The reason that we're bringing this up right now is that LED lights can last 20, 30 years. The choices that you make for your street lights in the coming months and year or so are going to be a decision that you're going to have to live with for a long time. And so it's important to get it right while you have the chance to do so. I think that kind of covers it, Jason.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you, Kelly. I mean, I love things in threes, right? Color, temperature, intensity of light, and do they need to be there or all the time, right? Things in threes, everybody understands. So thank you. Okay, we're gonna go over to Lauren Sinatra. She has been our energy coordinator? Is it direct? What's it?
It's still coordinator at this point.
Okay,
Thanks, Jason.
Yeah. Since the beginning that this was this position was started in 2011. Before that, we did not have an energy coordinator, anything. So I've had the pleasure of working with Lauren. Even when I was working for town administration, we were doing Google Maps of where all the streetlights were. Lauren, go ahead. Thank you.
Thank you, Jason. And thank you to the Civic League and especially Gail Walker for helping to shine a light on this very important topic. The Energy Office has been actively investigating LED streetlight conversions since 2014. We've now had 2 pilot experiments, which I'll get into in a little bit more detail, for the many sustainability benefits mentioned, including energy efficiency, cost savings, increased reliability, and the reduction of light pollution. So I hope, Frank, you can be sharing my, all right, next slide, please. And I know Kelly touched on it, but just to give a little more detail about our inventory. The town owns 199 decorative street lamps, which are primarily located downtown and in Sconset. There are 2 styles, the Boulevard and the Philadelphia. The majority are 70 watt. They are all high pressure sodium, which gives out that 2200 to 2400 Kelvin warm temperature. There are 2 40 watt LEDs installed downtown at this point. As Kelly mentioned, the town owns our inventory of decorative street lamps, which means that we are at liberty now to convert them to LED. It's all about identifying the right technology, the right color, the right systems, the right controls. And of course, there would be a capital expense to any conversion project. I did mention a pilot experiment that I collaborated with WPI on in 2014. And in that pilot experiment, we converted 9 street lamps to LED in different color temperatures, ranging from 2400 to 4000. And a public survey revealed the majority of survey takers preferred the warmer lighting temperatures between 2400 and 3000. And the mass majority would support an LED conversion if it resulted in color uniformity and less outages. People appreciated the lights being on. And only one of the LEDs that we installed in 2014 is still operational. Unfortunately, it is the 4000 K color temperature, which is located on the corner of Federal and Broad Street. But that pilot experiment helped us to conclude that if the town were to pursue LED conversions downtown, we should look at new fixtures installed with LEDs already versus retrofits, which proved to be problematic, and the drivers would burn out, water damage, etc. So next slide, please. This is, besides the one pilot already installed on Broad Street, this is the most recent LED installed just this past month at the new horse fountain, 2700K and 40-watt LED. So it is still considered a very warm color temperature, but it is not as warm as the high pressure sodium lamps. But I invite everybody to check it out. We've received very positive feedback to date. Next slide, please. The majority of street lighting on Nantucket is overhead roadway street lighting. We have 593 Cobra head street lights. The majority are high pressure sodium in 50-watt output. The 100 watts are installed at intersections, just like with our decorative street lamps. The 100 watts for public safety standards are traditionally and consistently installed at intersections and at corners. There are 6 LEDs installed, which was at the town's request as a pilot experiment with National Grid. There are 2 ways that the town could pursue LED conversions of these streetlights. The first is by requesting National Grid to retrofit their own fixtures, but again, we're at the mercy of their own company-approved inventory. In 2019 and still up until this moment, the warmest color temperature they will install is 4000 K. We were curious to see if that would be publicly appropriate or acceptable to the Nantucket community. So we did choose Milestone Road as the test location for specifically the very dark intersections. I would say the feedback has been mixed. Certain people certainly appreciate the increased light. Others have complained about the glare once looking upwards. We've since pursued lighting shields to try to mitigate that glare to oncoming drivers, and I think that has made a difference. The second way that we can pursue an LED conversion allows more flexibility, but it would require the town to purchase the entire inventory from National Grid, which was quoted in the $175,000 to $200,000 range. Then we would be at liberty to install or select and install the appropriate light fixture of our choosing, and then we would take on all of the operation and maintenance costs as well. So we would have to make sure that there is an on-island or off-island company that could regularly maintain the lights for us if there were any problems with the new technology. And there I just have a couple statistics of what we used and paid in fiscal year 2020 for our overhead lights from National Grid. 185,000 kilowatt hours at an expense of $84,000. Next slide, please. Another reason why the town is again interested in looking at the conversion of street lighting has to do with our relatively new Green Communities designation, which was achieved last year after many years of effort and trying to achieve that designation by meeting 5 energy criteria, one of which was an energy reduction plan, which requires that the town reduce its energy baseline by 20% over 5 years. So although street lighting only accounts for 1% of that baseline, there is still grant money available and significant money in the tens of thousands of dollars for us for energy savings if we were to convert to LED. And again, there are annual grant funding rounds every year, but in order for us to apply for Green Communities grant funding for street lighting, design services, or new equipment and controls, we need a plan. And I think before we can get to a plan, we do need to continue this discussion and invite stakeholder engagement and to really understand what we're looking for this project, which, as Kelly mentioned, really is very long serving. These lights will be in operation for possibly decades. So we want to make sure that we get any conversion project right the first time. And with that, I have one more slide, please. And this is more or less a public safety service announcement that in terms of reporting, that there are 2 ways to report an outage for the overhead street lighting. A call must be made to National Grid at their customer service number listed in the slide. For any issues regarding the town's decorative street lamps, you can call DPW, send an email, or the town has online forms on their website where you can find the number of a street light through an interactive map and submit a service request through an online form. So with that, I turn it back to Jason and look forward to the questions at the end of the seminar. Thank you.
Thanks, Lauren. Lauren, did you want to talk a little bit about the work group that we're working on? Or do you want to wait on that? Or I can speak to it.
Maybe you could just provide a few remarks.
Yeah, I mean, the next step is to have a work group. And I mentioned this at a select board meeting, a couple months ago of having a work group of all the, like you said, different stakeholders, select board members from the DPW and plus, and people from the community. And we kind of outlined that roughly of getting together and looking at the options and doing a lighting assessment and just seeing what this will really cost, what will it save us, what are our options, and then then we would do surveys. And so that work group is in the process of getting started. I could say that, right, Lauren?
Yes, I completely support you in this initiative. We can see what other successful examples in other communities have looked like. And usually there is a sustainability committee or an energy committee helping to identify the technologies, the colors, host a pilot experiment, host the public surveys. And I think the more voices, the better in this process. It shouldn't fall down to 1 or 2 staff trying to make the best decisions or determinations on their own.
Thank you, Lauren. Now we're going to go back to you, Kelly, and talk about maybe some legislation and different things that's going on. And we could continue the learning process and how to be advocates.
Yeah, thank you. And Lauren, as you were flashing your numbers there, I caught what your current street light consumption is in terms of kilowatt hours and also the cost. And if I ran the numbers right quickly, you're paying 45 cents per kilowatt hour, which is an awful lot. And the reason it's so much, because a lot of people are scared of this notion of the numbers you put in terms of what it would cost to purchase the street lights from National Grid. But I think it's important to remember that National Grid is essentially charging you a rental fee for every street light, and that's why that kilowatt hour rate is so high. So you're going to pay for the street light one way or the other, whether you own it or not. What I'd like to do is just to touch on what's going on at the state level here. And I want to talk to you about legislation that's going on that I helped write, and which I hope you will get all of your island state representatives to co-sponsor. This is a legislation that makes a very common sense proposal, which is for new or replacement lighting that involves state or municipally funded projects, like replacing your street lights, for example, then those lights should be fully shielded. That is, so that all of the light coming out of those fixtures is below horizontal and hits the ground. That's important point number one. The second is that that lighting must have a color temperature of 3000 Kelvin or less. That is not a particularly high bar because if you talk to other communities in Massachusetts, no one is actually installing 4000 Kelvin knowingly. 3000, 2700 is what everybody's putting in these days, pretty much. I won't say everybody, but the vast majority. And then it also asks the Massachusetts Department of Transportation to adopt best practices. I'll give you just a snapshot of an example that I've gotten involved with. Some of you in your occasional drives up to Boston, maybe you use Route 24 that goes through Randolph and such, and where 24 intersects Interstate 95, 128. That T intersection is right at the Blue Hills Reservation, the largest area, conservation area in the greater Boston area. And MassDOT has been negotiating to replace all the street lighting along there. And one of the things that they're going to employ is what are called high mast towers, which are literally like War of the Worlds. They're 150 feet tall. I'm sure you've seen them. They shine down a giant circular patch on the ground to illuminate a huge area, whether it's roadway or not. And they were going to have this lighting fall on the Blue Hills Reservation, where there's a lot of endangered and sensitive wildlife and plants. So we got involved with that. And our goal here is to have, through state legislation, have sort of MassDOT become more accountable for the kind of lighting practices that you use. Often you have a roadway situation where you don't actually need lights. All you need are like well-painted lines on the road and maybe some reflective markers, and often that will serve the purpose instead of using lights. And then finally, and this is the part that is really important to Nantucket and everyone who's installing LED streetlights. You heard Lauren say that your high pressure sodium lighting that you have now in residential areas uses 50 watts of power, and in the main intersections that's 100 watts. It's actually more than that because that type of fixture has an overhead of like 10 or 15% through ballast and stuff that causes it to use more energy than that. A typical LED streetlight in a residential area will probably only use about 15 watts of power once you get it installed to give you the same equivalent brightness and perception of lighting in that area. The problem is that right now, the state of Massachusetts, the Department of Public Utilities establishes these rates that the utilities can charge for the electricity. And the lowest rate allowed for streetlights is for 25 watts. So you might go through and install all these beautiful streetlights that are only using 15 watts of electricity, but the utility will have its hands tied and will have to charge you for more than that, for 25 watts. So that's the last peg here of this state legislation. We want the DPU to adopt lower power tariffs for the kinds of lighting that's being installed, or say you want to dim the lights halfway through the night. We want you to be able to recoup in an economic sense all the good deeds that you're doing in an environmental sense. We not only do we want street lighting to be environmentally smart, but also to be able to save you money in the process of doing it. And that's sort of it. You can see right now, these are brand new bills. This Senate and House versions that are identical. If you go on the state legislature's website and just look up dark sky bill, everyone on Beacon Hill knows about this bill, believe it or not, and a great many of them support it. So we're hoping that in this legislative session, this bill will become a reality and it will begin to pay dividends for Nantucket almost immediately.
Thank you, Kelly. That was a great kind of wrap up of everything. Thank you, Leslie, Lauren. It was very, very comprehensive, I think, conversation in an hour, but there's a lot there. I just listening to this, I feel like everyone has a stake in this or could have a passion in this, right? Mental health, physical health, right? Conservationists, environmentalists, if in animals. It's not just if you're an astronomer. I mean, if you're into tourism, preserving what we've had here for a long time, right? Our cultural districts, like everyone can benefit from having a dark sky and darker sky, and we can do it in a safe way. So thank you all. We're going to switch over to Q&As, and we're up first is Joseph Arve. So Frank, if you could, oh, there you are, Joseph. You'll be unmuted here in a second. Joseph, go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yep, go ahead.
Okay, yeah. It's this is probably the second or third get together with regard to the dark sky that I've been to and seen some of the same folks, and I applaud what we're doing. I live in Sconset, and I just wonder what the town can do. I realize the overhead lights along the beach are national grid, but it just seems I'm flabbergasted that they put up these large, what I would call overhead lighting you see on a highway, literally on the beach. They ultimately all went out after a couple of years, and now I see they've replaced the bulbs again. That's one issue I've got. The other is, it's great talking about, sorry about that. It's great talking about enforcement, but I've called Mr. Silverstein a number of times, and talking to the neighbors a great idea, but the houses involved have 5 bare 100-watt bulbs and on the exterior, and these people rent their places. So it's very difficult to speak to the actual homeowner. We've spoken to the caretaker who agrees with us 100%, but over the last 5 years, absolutely nothing is done, and these lights are on all night. And I just get no response whatsoever.
Thank you, Joseph. Did you have a question?
What can I do about it?
Well, I think that's why we're trying to have this work group. And I mean, Leslie, you could comment on that, or I don't know if there's an answer.
Okay.
Well, I don't want to get into, specific complaints and addresses and that sort of thing in this forum, but if Mr. Arve would like to contact me, I would be happy to make sure that his complaint is at least addressed in some way.
What can we do about the national grid? It seems like we must have some kind of control over what they've done.
Well, I can tell you, just talking to Lauren Sinatra about this over the years, we're kind of at the whims of this big company. So one of the options is to take over all these, and so we can fix them, so we can put up the bulbs that we want. So that's the work group that's one of the things that we would dig into as a work group of what are the costs, what are the hurdles. So that would be one way to fix that, right? So we have local control.
Well,
Yeah.
okay, but we do have some kind of control, because memory serves me, a couple of years ago, I brought this to the attention of the town, and there were partial shields placed over these. I'm not sure they're still on the lights, but at least a couple of them had partial shields. So did National Grid do that at our request, or did we do that as a town? I'm not sure.
Lauren?
So the question is, something gave.
Yep. Thank you. Lauren, can you answer that? And we have to move on. There's 7 other people who want to.
Yes, typically if a complaint comes in about a specific light that's shining into someone's bedroom, we can, from the town, request a shield be installed. We do understand that there is a supply shortage. So we don't have any shields at this moment, but hopefully more are coming. But it's not something that should be taken for granted. It's something that really is meant to address those 100-watt intersection lights, not every light on the island. So we do have to treat this case by case.
Just give DPW a roll of aluminum foil and a ladder. Joseph, I want to mention, if Nantucket does this intelligently as they go forward, it's not just about replacing a light that exists with an LED, 1 for 1. You're going to and I know there's agreement, I'm pretty sure, to actually do an audit of the lighting that you have. Do you need it in the places you have? Are there places where you need it that you don't have it? Is the lighting level correct? And so like that shoreline installation you were talking about, I am sure that would be something that would be looked at and addressed and getting the best fit for the circumstance.
Thanks, Kelly. Thanks, Lauren. Okay, we'll go to Nicholas Platt.
Unmute. Okay. I am in Nantucket quite a bit, and also was a mayor in my town in New Jersey that was the only successful town out of 565 municipalities to actually remove the streetlights in the town, using the fact that we did not have sidewalks. But what we found worked is with our homeowners, was that we put in our tax mailings a picture of an international dark sky fixture that had a shielded light source. And then I was able to put through an ordinance that prohibited any light fixture that had a hotspot that you could actually see the light source. But there are some things that towns can do, and that is provide a subsidized 2,740 lumen or 40-watt bulbs, subsidize the purchase of a fully shielded downlit fixture that would go outside the door. Because if you bear down and you realize how this happens, a house is under construction. The contractor tells the owner, we're going to have a house inspection in order to get our certificate of occupancy. Go out and get some exterior lights, whether they're jelly jars or whatever. And they go out, and if you look before Amazon took over the world, you'd go to a local lighting place, and the only thing they'd have is a four-sided glass bare bulb fixture that they would be, then the lighting store would give them 260-watt bulbs that would just light up the neighborhood. So I think you have to help the consumer do the right thing by educating them through your municipality in a mailing, and maybe find someone to help subsidize the cost of the proper 2,700 bulb and the proper fixture.
Thank you, Nicholas. That's helpful. I took some notes down, and we should talk. The mayor in New Jersey. That's pretty awesome. Thank you. Did anybody want to make a comment on anything Nicholas said? Okay. Thank you. Okay, we're going to go to Mary Longacre, and after that, I just got a question from Leslie Forbes, and I'll read that after Mary's.
Thank you, Jason. So I wonder if purchasing the infrastructure from National Grid might offer other opportunities. I'm thinking either for the town to have a Wi-Fi network that was, with repeaters located, or some kind of cellular booster service. And if either of those is, in any way possible, perhaps you'd include somebody from the IT department on the work group.
That's a great suggestion. Kelly, do you know of anybody that's done that or added that in?
I don't. I mean, there are certainly systems of lights that are controlled by IP address, and so they have to have Wi-Fi connections to through repeaters or what have you. It's important to understand that if you end up buying the street lights from National Grid, they will still own the poles. Mm-hmm. And still own the right of way to those poles, and so they don't give up everything. So especially you're in kind of a tough situation because you don't have a lot of a workforce that can easily handle pole mounted fixtures, and so I can completely imagine that you have dead spots where the Wi-Fi isn't getting there very often, and that's something of a different problem to try to address. But I totally agree that if you're already going to have, trucks and work crews installing lights, that would be an opportune time to upgrade other kinds of infrastructure that you've got.
Thank you, Kelly. Thanks, Mary. Anything else? Mary?
Oh, sorry. No, that was it, Jason. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Great suggestion. Okay, Charlie, before I go to you, Leslie sent us in an email, just kind of, I'll try to get the essence of it. Leslie Forbes, without proper property owners and landscape designers being educated in some high profile enforcement, the lighting proliferates. An owner can think, and quote, that looks nice on my neighbor's property, I'll do that too. So the question is, what are the most effective practices, regulations that other towns have used to get the light pollution under control? And then the second question, would mounting a campaign to have Nantucket designated a dark sky community help? So 2 questions there.
So let me try, I'll jump in on both of those.
Sure.
A really good way, a lot of people, and you've alluded to this, Jason, a lot of people install bad quality lighting, not because it's an intentional thing, but they just don't know. And so I would recommend that anytime somebody pulls a building permit, that the building inspector hand out a sheet that details the outdoor lighting ordinance that you already have and provides suggestions of what would be compliant, conforming fixtures or not. And that way, there's little question that you'll at least inform them. There can't be that many electricians that come to Nantucket or have licenses to practice there. So it wouldn't take long to sort of blanket that community. Another thing is through your planning board, whenever somebody comes forward to do a commercial building or something like that, to make sure that your planning board is on your side and asks for a lighting plan in addition to all the other plans that are part of that building and permitting process. The second half, I'm sorry, could you repeat it? The second half.
Would mounting a campaign to have Nantucket designated as a dark sky?
Oh, yeah. Thank you very much. Yes, it's entirely possible to do. You would be, there, if you go to the darksky.org website and look at international dark sky places, there are different categories, and you don't necessarily need to be some pristine national park in order to qualify. There's a category called international dark sky communities. And I have to say that you have a really good lighting ordinance for something that was approved in 2005. To have a lighting enforcement officer, which is almost always the weak link in enforcement, that is really forward-looking, and you should all be very proud of that. And so that and what's going on here would put you on the right track to have that sort of status conferred on you by the IDA. And I would, once you get this working group together, I will happily point you in the direction. The IDA has a person who that's all they do is they support this dark sky place program and provide the guidance to get that designation for you. I think that's actually quite a great idea. Although we need to get rid of that. We need to get rid of that mystery light source out on the west half of the island where there's nothing apparently but a blank field.
Leslie, do you want to comment on that?
Yeah, I just wanted to touch on a couple of things that came up. Distributing information through Plus is a great idea because we not only have, the building permits issued, but we have the wiring inspector. I think it's important to point out on Nantucket with, the type of development that we see a lot. There's all different trades and professions involved in creating, the project. So you have, your landscape architects, your landscape designers, and you have the electricians, but then you have the architect who might be picking out the fixtures. It's a complicated process. It's not as simple as just giving it to one group or another. They all work sort of independently. So I think education and outreach is a great idea. And there's, some different ways that we could go about that and think about how we can improve that. With the planning board comment that came up, our planning board does review lighting plans typically, especially on larger projects. They want to know where the lights are going to be a lot of the time. Quite frequently, people ask for waivers from lighting that's not necessary in order to keep the more rural character. But the light fixtures frequently are approved by the Historic District Commission. So that's another outlet to promote the education.
Thank you, Leslie. Okay, we're gonna go to Charlie Stott. He's got his hand up.
Thank you, Jason. And thanks to all of you for your presentations. Questions. One, an enforcement question for Leslie, and that is Marcus available to come out in the evenings to investigate complaints? And secondly, on the education issue, would it be possible to include a summary of the bylaw as an enclosure in the property tax bill?
Well, go ahead, Leslie.
I'm not sure about the property tax bill question, so I can't answer that, but certainly something to consider, or sending it out with the town census or something like that. But the evening inspection question, we do have staff, Marcus, the lighting enforcement officer at the moment, who can go out to review complaints that are in the evening hours. Typically, lighting enforcement really comes down to, is the light shielded? Is it downward aimed? A lot of times you can do that during the daytime, but we can certainly authorize him to go out and view things at night if needed. While I have the opportunity, there is a citizen petition article on the warrant for this town meeting. It was carried over from the 2020 ATM. I don't have that article number handy, but it did get a negative recommendation from the Finance Committee both years, and it specifically addresses evening inspections and overtime pay for the lighting enforcement officer. So what's suggested in that article, we can already do. We don't need town meeting authorization to do that. So it's not that the Finance Committee and other groups aren't supportive of nighttime inspections. It's that we don't need that article in order to make it happen.
Thank you, Leslie. But Charlie, I do like your suggestion of summarizing the bylaw, because it's pretty extensive and a little confusing. So thank you. We've got about 10 minutes left, so I'm gonna try to get to 5 more people who's got their hands up. Is that all you had, Charlie?
That's it, Jason.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll go to Buddy. Stefanoff, you're up. Sometimes it takes a second.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yep, there you are.
There I am. I'm the vice president of a company based in Oklahoma called Crossroads LED. We provide dark sky lighting for cities and municipalities. And a couple of things I wanted to bring up in this meeting is this afternoon, the International Dark Sky Association has changed their standards for dark sky compliant lighting. The maximum was at one time 3,000 Kelvin. They've lowered that today to 2,200 Kelvin. The other item I wanted to bring up is that what was touched on before with LEDs, amber LEDs and color temperature, is that unlike HPS lamps, which can get down to about 2,000 Kelvin and have a color rendering index of about 20 to 25, amber colored LEDs can go down easily to 2,000 Kelvin and still maintain a 65 CRI rating. So that color rendering, the ability to depict color on a surface, is much easier on the human eye at night. And the technology is available to bring the color temperatures down to as low as 1,650 Kelvin for phosphor converted LEDs. So I just kind of wanted to offer that bit of technological insight on the status of the technology for LED technology. Thank you.
Thank you, buddy. That's something that this group has talked about if we were to do this 5 years ago and we were to purchase the streetlights and change everything to 3,000 and we're all high-fiving each other. And now when do you start, right? As technology keeps getting better. So that's really interesting. Thank you for letting us know about that. 2,200. Wow, Kelly. That's a good thing.
We can actually manufacture lights all the way down to 1,000 Kelvin. We can make them about as red as you can make them. So that's for observatories. But right now, the standard the most often requested light is somewhere between 1,700 and 2,000 Kelvin. Those are our hot products today.
Wow. Thank you, buddy. Appreciate that.
Thank you.
Okay, we can go to Lucy Dillon.
Can you hear me, Jason?
Yes, go ahead, Lucy.
Okay, I have two questions. In the work group, is HDC or HSAB going to be involved? And my second question is, I haven't flown into the island recently because of COVID, but it used to be that when you flew in at night, there is a large estate, possibly at the end of Rabbit Run Road, somewhere around in that area, which was lit up excessively. It almost looked like a shopping mall. If you go back and look at the lighting pollution map of the island, it is one of the hot spots. And I was wondering if that still is a problem. Can something be done about it? Thank you.
Thank you, Lucy. Like your first part of the work group, we haven't, that's a great idea, having someone from HGC and preservation. I think Lauren and I talked about it. We haven't formalized anything. It's really just in the beginning stages, but that's a great idea. And like Lauren said, there'll be a ton of outreach with stakeholders. For the Rabbit Run area, I'm not sure. What could we do? I think, reaching out to Plus and the lighting enforcement agent. Is that right, Leslie?
And I know that Ms. Dillon's very familiar with the citizen complaint form. So if she wants to fill one of those out with the address and get it to us, we will take a look at it.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Lucy. Okay, on to Leslie Forbes. Sorry, Leslie, I didn't read your entire email, so I might have missed something.
Okay, I just want to say I'm going to vote for Nicholas Platt for mayor of New Jersey. I think he's got great ideas. Having just finished an addition, I can tell you that you can become very price sensitive. So I love the idea of the town underwriting the cost of some of the appropriate lighting, because sometimes you just get to push comes to shove and you go for the cheapest route. So if you underwrote it, it solves some of the problems. So and most of my questions have already been answered. So thank you very much. I would say that the airport would need some checking, because it is bright out there. I've been to people's houses in Matacasham, and the answer they get is, oh, well, it's required. Well, we've heard tonight that requirements seem to be changing. So I think that needs a closer look, because those are on all night long and they're very, very, very bright and not shielded at all. So who knows what the regulations are? I do not. Thank you for your help on all of this. I wonder if that bright light at Cliff Road and Eel Point might be the water tower. The hot spot.
Maybe. Thank you, Leslie.
Jason, if I could just jump in for one clarification, that unlike, I believe, in New Jersey, in the state of Massachusetts, utility ratepayers subsidize efficient lighting already through the Mass Save program. So through education, I think we can help advise people on what would comply with our lighting ordinances, but the products are already subsidized by utility ratepayers, and you can buy the bulbs through Marine Home Center, or your electricians or contractors can buy upstream lighting incentive or incentivized equipment through Granite City or any of the electrical supply equipment houses.
Thank you, Lauren.
Thank you.
Leslie, we did have a question on the airport, right?
Yeah, there was a question earlier from the airport, and without looking at that exact language, I think Leslie's question kind of covers that one too. I did reach out to Noah Carberg. He's the assistant airport manager. And he responded to me and said that in January, the airport commission adopted a lighting policy, and the policy commits the airport to utilize, I don't know if it's BUG or B-U-G, methodology endorsed by IES to minimize light trespass. And he attached the policy, so that may be on their website if people want to take a look at that, but it applies to new infrastructure projects or any project that retrofits existing lighting. He also pointed out that the airport is subject to federal requirements that require illumination of operating areas. So that's something that they have to follow. And he said where federal and local policy conflict, they're committed to trying to work something out with us. So I thought that was all positive. But
Yeah, it is.
Thank you, Leslie.
Jason, before we continue, I apologize. I have a hard stop at 6:30, and I want to thank again everyone for coming and listening. And I look forward to how things work out for you, and I will be helping and watching.
Thank you, Kelly. I appreciate it. I was hoping to get the next two. I got Bruce Mandel and Lee Saperstein with a couple quick questions. If we could go to Bruce really quick. Thank you, Kelly.
Okay.
Thank you, Jason. Just two comments, a couple quick comments. One, I'd like to thank everybody for this and the effort that's been put in. It's been very informative. For Lauren, maybe some help with the mass save inspections that we often take advantage of. When they come out, they're very helpful in terms of lighting fixtures and energy saving ideas and things like that. Perhaps we could add to their checklist a inspection of the outdoor lighting fixtures, and they could make some suggestions in that regard. The other thing is when we review, for example, at the Manicat Advisory Board, there's been a large amount of pools, substantial number of pool applications recently. And when we ask questions or try to ask questions about lighting, we're told we're not permitted to do anything relating to lighting, only what can be physically seen from the street on a public way in terms of what the place looks like. So I'm not sure HDC has jurisdiction over lighting, and I know that pools in Manicat need to go to ZBA and some of the zoning BR, for example, for special permit. And oftentimes what's lacking is a photometric diagram of the lighting that's proposed outdoors for the pool. And I'd like to suggest that to the powers that be, that we add that to the approval process. And that, I believe, would help in the long run. Thank you.
Thank you, Bruce. Any comments there from anybody? Okay. All right, last question, Lee Saperstein.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. Go ahead.
Board member Bridges and members of town government, appreciate your listening to me. I looked at section 102 of the town code, and the first thing it says is you're exempt from these requirements if you have 600 lumens or less, which is equivalent to a 40-watt bulb. Can we go through the town bylaw and insert the appropriate size of bulbs for these various sections that are LEDs? I think they're 5 or 7, not quite sure which, but certainly not 40. And then just as a couple of comments, I was part of a university planning committee, and we were considering lighting up walkways. the women students said, we will not walk on a walkway which is dark. So however we go forward, let's make sure that security is part of the equation without, of course, lighting up the skies. And then my final comment is that even if we have 100% downlighting, that light is reflected off the ground surface that becomes an uplight. And so my only question is whether or not there are temperatures that are less likely to reflect, And I thank you for your time.
Thank you, Lee. Appreciate that. I think that's something that the work group would be working on is the bylaw. Maybe it'd be the phase 1 or phase 2. So it's, it's purchasing the street lights, it's education, but the bylaw technology has changed so much that the bylaw needs to be looked at, right, and simplified. I think that's why I've heard that from a lot of different people within the town, out of the town government.
And one cheese in the share.
So thank you, Lee. Any last comments from any of the panelists?
No, I just want to thank everybody for, attending tonight. There are a lot of people on here, and I think there are a lot of great ideas that were shared, and hopefully we can, do a better job promoting our outdoor lighting bylaw.
Thank you, Leslie. Well, I want to thank forgot one thing. Dr. Regina Jorgensen, our astronomy director from Ryan Mitchell, couldn't make it till the end, and she came on. I wanted to give you just a moment to talk about anything that what dark skies mean to you. Probably pretty important.
Sure. Yeah. Thanks, Jason. And hi, everybody. Sorry, my apologies. I had a conflict with the earlier part of the meeting, so I'm sorry for missing it. But I just want to say I appreciate all of your all's work on this, and that, it seems like a lot of people here on Nantucket do care about this really precious natural resource that we have. And I think Nantucket can be a leader in this. It's obviously important for my work as an astronomer and everything we do at Mariah Mitchell, because if we don't have a dark sky, we can't do, the astronomy work that we do. And I think it's also really important for all of the outreach that we do to locals and visitors who come to Mariah Mitchell, to the observatory. And, I can't tell you how many times I hear of visitors say, this is the first time they've seen the Milky Way, which is spectacular in the summertime here when it's dark. And you don't see that a lot of places anymore. So I think it's really, really important that we keep this natural resource intact as long as we can. And so anyways, I'm sorry that I missed everything. I'm happy to talk with anybody at any point if I can be of use or of help in this effort.
Thank you, Regina. Thank you to the Civic League for hosting. Thank you, Gail Walker, for doing all the tons and tons of work behind the scenes to bringing us all together. Thank you, Leslie Snell from PLUS, Lauren Sinatra from Energy Office, Gary Walker, the telescope engineer from Ryan Mitchell, and been 20, 30, 40, 50 years in this game. And then definitely Kelly Beatty. That was a really great kind of education he gave us tonight, and we'll be able to rewatch this. Gail, you're muted. There you go.
Thank you. I wanted to thank all the panelists for agreeing to be a part of this. You guys were great. And I just want to say, I'm just a citizen activist in all this. And in that role, would like to encourage everybody who is watching and will watch the recording to join me in lobbying for the passage of those two bills that are the dark sky bills that are being considered by the Massachusetts legislature this year. And look for, I think I will be probably creating a petition so that you can express your support for that easily. So please look for that. And thank you so much for your interest in this. And again, thank you to all the panelists. You guys were great.
Thank you, Gail, and thanks for all the attendees. Thanks for all the questions. I think we're really heading in the right direction, and something that we all can collaborate on and do some really good positive work moving forward quickly. All right, thank you, NCTV 18. Appreciate it. Everybody have a good night.